All right, good evening, everybody. This is Jeff O'Dre, the owner of Tipple's Brews and Wine, running solo this week. Next week, we'll get Elizabeth back on camera with me and have a much better show. So forgive me for this week. So tonight, we're going to be drinking the Fronton de Oro Tinto Tradicional red wine from Gran Canaria Island in the Canary Islands, owned by Spain, down just off the coast of Africa. Really interesting, one of the more obscure locations that we could find a wine available in the United States. Let's see here. This guy, everything produced in the Gran Canaries, as you might imagine, and we'll look at it a little bit more, is really small production. So no ratings to share tonight. So I thought it might be fun because many of you have been with me a couple of times. I will look at the rating system at the end and see where we all think this guy lines up. So I thought that would be kind of fun. And let me see if there's somebody I need to let in. I think they're able to just jump in. So excellent. All right. So if you haven't already done so, let's get right to the fun part. Pour some wine. I chilled mine down to about 65 degrees. That's my favorite temperature to begin drinking a red wine. Refrigeration for about 30 minutes is perfect. This wine, being such an interesting and unusual wine, pairs well with Mediterranean dishes, the red sauce Mediterranean dishes, Spanish pork dishes, and traditional Italian dishes as well work really nicely. This wine, being Spanish, drinks a little bit more Italian to me than Spanish traditionally does. The grape on this guy is named Listan Negro. Listan Negro originated on the Spanish mainland and started as what's called the mission grape. The mission grape was used by many missionaries, and a lot of it was spread around by the Catholic priests throughout the world. So you'll find it everywhere from California to South America, and here with all kinds of different options. Let me jump over real quick, and we'll jump into the screen. So here's our beautiful wine of the week. Like I said, spice meats, pork, lamb, Mediterranean, really spicy foods, and rich red meats that aren't too fatty work great with this wine. Here's the overall view of the Spanish wine regions. So when you look at this guy, you know, we've explored couple of areas. We've explored down in Jumilla, down here. And then we were in Priorat as well. And now here we are, the Canary Islands, which, to show you how far away they are from Spain, because they have it in this little subset here, this is not where they are. They are way over here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it is a long way. So these are the Madeira Islands, owned by Portugal. And that's where the famous dessert wine comes from. And then the Canary Islands are way down here off of Morocco. And this specific one is where we will be tonight. So here's an up close view of the Canaries. And right in the center here, we have Gran Canaria, which is where we're drinking. And that's Bodegas Fronton right here is marked on the map, which I love Google Maps that you can do that. Because here it is right at the top. These islands are volcanic, and the mountains and such are all, you know, they were all volcanoes at one point in time. And this guy is up in one of the terraces toward the higher levels of the volcanic rise on that island. And then here we have a little closer version. You can see where they have, so here we have on the lee side of the island here, where they get a little more moisture. You can see this is the green side of the island, and that's where these guys are. It's still at the higher elevations, not particularly wet, which would be absolutely necessary for grape production, for wine grape production. So this blend, this is actually a blend. It's mostly Listan Negro, which, like I said, was the mission grape brought over by the Spanish missionaries. It's a blended with a little bit of a wine grape named Tinto. And Tinto comes from Italy. So the Canary Islands were a frequent stop in the 1400s for world explorers. And that's where that kind of two phases came in there. We had Italy and you had Spain, Portugal for a time as well. But these were the grapes that really kind of took over, were the Spanish and the Italian from the area, though dominantly Spanish. Jump back out. All right, let's talk about the wine a little bit now that I've just done a quick overview. Alcohol in this guy is 14.5%. It varies. It goes between 13.5 and 14.5. So it's not a huge variation, but this was clearly one of the warmer years of growth because it is at the higher end of what they produce in the Canary Islands. It sees a little bit of oak. The volcanic soils are going to give it a lot of minerality, and it's going to have this really kind of striking herbal peppery note is one of the things that jumps out to me. Like a, you know, like a pink peppercorn. I opened this guy up about 20 minutes before we began talking. So at this point, he's been open about 30. I think the wine really does improve with some air. It's kind of a nice ripe cherry, really peppery, rather velvety on the tannins, not particularly aggressive on the tannin at all. Not that there's none. It prickles across the tongue, keeps it fresh, but I wouldn't say it's intensely tannic. Very dry, very medium bodied. It's not real heavy on the palate, just kind of right in the middle there. And then the nice, I'd say the nice acidity and minerality really jump out on this guy. So what are you guys thinking?
Yeah, I definitely get some like cherry and that minerality you were saying too. I also think it really benefited from being open. It didn't take that long, but I probably poured it, waited a few minutes, took a sip, and I was like, hold on. And it came back with maybe 5 or 10 minutes later. So like I think it really only took like maybe 15 minutes to kind of open up, but really benefited from that. And I don't know, it's really a much stronger flavor than I thought it was when I first started.
I just opened mine, and the first thing that hit me was the peppers.
Yeah. Right.
Very peppery.
Yeah.
So I get that, and then you said it. So we have like pepper crackers and like peppercini. So I was like, tried that, and then I could taste it, and I was like, is it because I ate this stuff to see? But hey, there it is.
Hey, John, welcome. So yeah, I agree. It's I love that combination. It's this really nice, dry, peppery, very old world driven wine.
World or is it Chris?
You're unmuted.
Yeah, I think that if I blind tasted it, I would have guessed Italian. Though the giveaway on the Italian would be that there's really not a lot of floral component to this guy. I'm not getting one. What do you guys think? I'm not getting a lot of floral component.
Italian. I don't think it's heavy enough to be Italian.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of light at first. I mean, now that I'm drinking it, it's kind of getting a little heavier, but it's super easy drinking. It's like,
yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I was like, oh, this is really light, and now I'm like, it can really hold its own really nicely. It does kind of remind me of a Spanish wine, maybe like a Rioja or a Tempranillo or something else like that. That you get a little bit of that pepperiness and a little bit of that floral characteristic.
Yeah.
But
I like what you're saying there, Chris. I agree. Like the Rioja version of Tempranillo has a lot of acidity to it. And then the Priorat version of Syrah has a lot of pepper to it. So it's almost like a marriage of those two, you know, I think. But it's a fun wine. I got to say, it is unique. I find it, thankfully, delicious and also unique in the world as far as, you know, you almost couldn't mistake this for anything else. There's nothing that has come together with exactly this combination of flavors.
I feel like Italian wine forces you to like drink it slowly, or at least me. Whereas this, I'm like, oops, I just drank my whole glass.
Yeah, I would go, it's almost like an easy drinking version of a Northern Italian red. So when you get up there into the Barolos with the Nebbiolos and that kind of a thing, except it does not have that floral component like Nebbiolo. or nor the tannins. They're not just not as aggressive. But what I come to with the Italians is when you have a flavorful punch with a lean body and a wine that you can see right through, that tends to remind me of Italian, which I think is why I'm going there. Though obviously in the end, it's really not that wouldn't be the end of this discussion. This is clearly not something that drinks Italian, but it has this old world with the minerality and the herbacity and the pepperiness, which would line up under herbacity, jumping in there as kind of these very dominant features.
It definitely doesn't have that California, like Americanized, kind of sweeter thing happening.
Right.
That's the only thing that makes me think Italian. It's like it doesn't have that like American California flavor.
I agree. It's the barrel that they're using clearly is not a new young barrel because there's not a lot of vanilla. There's not dill. I was doing a lot of research. This isn't, even though this is one of the only wines that from the Canary Islands that you can reliably get in the state of Florida, it still is not a large production, and actually we'll look at the winery in a few minutes. And like I said, there are no ratings on this. The information about which kind of barrels looked like, and I think that was mostly from the back of the bottle, that it was maybe American oak, but it can't be new American oak because it just does not have that big vanilla dill effect on it. So this is definitely not new oak. I almost thought it was unoaked for a little bit, but certainly neutrally oaked.
The other thing I noticed was I didn't see a vintage. Is it non-vintage or do they just not put that on there?
It's on there. It's extremely small and hard to
Oh, okay.
find. Yeah, it is. This is the 2018.
Okay.
And when I looked on the bottle, and I agree with you 100%, Brenda, unless I knew it was 2018, I never would have found this little tiny designation there that says T dash. It says T-1/18.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, if I hadn't known because of my connections that it was 2018, I agree. I would not have been able to find it. Did you find it in a different spot, Dave?
Okay.
He found it in the very back, but I don't really know how you discover that. I mean, there's
Oh, yeah,
all kinds
I see it now.
I
Down
see
at the
that.
bottom.
Yeah.
no implication that that's necessarily.
There's a couple.
Yeah, you're right. There it is on that vertical H at 2016. Yeah.
But that wouldn't draw my eye to
But-
it.
But is this the American oak? That little barrel that says Americano?
Yes, that's it. That's literally it.
Wow.
That was
Yeah,
the only reference I could find to it at all when I was looking at the website and trying to reach out to people. And then actually the Fronton de Oro is named after this. This is a rock formation. That's what this is on here.
Yeah.
We'll see a little bit more. I'm going to share this back over and jump in here. So we'll jump over here. So look at this area. Now this
Wow.
this is not Fronton de Oro. Fronton de Oro is actually a little more tropical than this, but the Canary Islands are known for largely white wine production and a lot of sweet wine production, which they're changing because the times have changed. They used to make a lot of sweet white wines to send with sailors, and that is no longer the preference. So they're moving it over. But you can see in some of these areas, when we talk about volcanic soils, that is volcanic soil right there. And in these areas, it's because there were no trees, they are actually having to, we've talked about this before, that wind is good for thickening the skin of grapes, which adds character to a wine because the flavor comes from the skin. But too much wind will just kill the vine. And so what they're doing here is trying to give it somewhat of a break. So they actually build up their own windbreaks on some of these vineyards. So this is Fronton de Oro, a terraced winery. And the Gran Canaria, the central island that we looked at before, is the only of the Canary Islands that is known to be dominated by red wine production.
The flavor is good.
And then here you see that they talk about terraced vineyards. These are the easiest of the vineyards to actually work. Here you see they still get that nice fog coming in to help cool things off, even though they get a lot of intense heat during the day. This is the winery over here, and then you see the terraces here. So they're at about 1,200 feet above sea level. These are the grapes. They've got that wonderful kind of almost a blueberry look to them. And the soil where they are growing is not just that black volcanic. It's a combination of the volcanic with a layer of clay. So they've got an ashy clay and then sand, and it's very well drained. Even though they do see quite a bit of moisture between the fog and then the rainy season, they are able to get a nice, dry, clean growth during the growing season. Without they get a lot of sun, some nice warmth without getting too much moisture where they would rot out the grapes. Now, the Canary Islands, as you might expect from seeing where they are, they're very remote. Phylloxera basically never got there. So they have some very, very old vines, which is really wonderful. And this specifically, this is a vine from Fronton de Oro. This is Fronton de Oro as well. So they have some vines that go all the way back to 100 plus years.
Is there any reason why they wouldn't have used those vines to try to regraft things? Especially if it's like, oh, hey, these are very similar to the same vines that were, from 100 years ago or something else like that, to be like, hey, actually, we have some right over here that are great, rather than going to like the Southwest United States.
So they can't use the rootstock from those, because the rootstock for those grapes are completely vulnerable to phylloxera. So when they are, So when they're putting those vines together to save them, they've got to use the rootstock from something that can handle phylloxera and not be killed by it. So the upper stock. So if they were to grab parts of the upper, they would just put it there with the rootstock from something else. So most of the rootstock that they're using in the areas that do have phylloxera is not actually wine grape rootstock. It's just grapevine rootstock that can handle phylloxera and is largely immune to it. So those little root aphids can just take a hike, but they're not in the Canaries, which is quite a wonderful thing. So Fronton de Oro, with those terraced hills, it is all hand harvested. This is another picture. This is Fronton de Oro. So you see everyone just literally walking through the vineyards, which is, to me, every time I see the fact that these vineyards were hand picked, hand harvested, hand pruned while they were optimizing the grapes, and you end up with a bottle of wine that's under $30 as it traveled across the world, it boggles my mind how that is at all possible. But,
and they had to import the oak to age it.
Yeah, right. That too. Exactly. So Fronton uses, like I say, traditional winemaking practices with traditional wine, grape growing practices with modern winemaking practices. So this is their press right here, and then these are their fermentation tanks here. So they get into all stainless to begin with, and actually, one thing I find interesting. So to show just how small the production is of what we're drinking here that's traveled across the world. This is a person's torso here. That's from the hips down, which kind of gives you an idea of how big this is. This is not that large a wine press because it's draining down here and then being sucked into these tanks. These tanks are probably, I bet that's only 10 feet tall. That's not 20 or 50. These are not huge barrel tanks. This is a fairly small family group that's making this wine for us, and yet they're one of the major exporters from the Canary Islands. That's how small all of their production is. This rock face, I could only get this stylized version. I wish I could just see the original one, but anyway, this is once again what we see on the label, and this is what they named themselves after, is the Fronton de Oro. which is right at the top of, you can see that because they're terraced, they're near the top of the volcanic peak there, and this is right at the top. This is the winery. You see the red color, which looked like that other one when you saw the terraces before. So 2 different views of the same winery here. So this is just, you know, it just looks like a very quaint, lovely place to go visit. And yet here we are drinking them in Gainesville, Florida. I think that's kind of cool. All right, let me jump out of here. And, hopefully my computer will stop. I'm frozen.
I know, I'm in the right spot. It's like,
I think that stuff's pretty good, so we can taste the cracked pepper with that. You can definitely
Here we go. Well, it looks like my mouse died. All right, so here we are. All right, so the Fronton de Oro family started as a family farm in 1977 with Antonio Ramirez. And excuse me while I enjoy. Antonio Ramirez started the family farm in 1977, bought this terraced land toward the top of the mountaintop there, and basically made it a family farm and began making some wine for himself. In 1999, his 2 sons, Antonio Jr. and Pedro, began making enough wine to sell at the local farmers market, and it grew from there. So now here they are, and that's not been long. We're talking about 21 years later. These guys are clearly self-taught. This is a raw wine. They're using the yeast that comes from the grapes right in the area. So you're getting a real taste of the Canary, which I think is awfully fun as far as just, you know, wine geeking out into something that's just, it's not going to be your everyday wine. You're not going to find this flavor, but it doesn't cost you $150 to taste. It's amazing. Let's see. This wine,
the yeast, you mentioned the yeast, Jeff. Do a lot of these wineries use like just the natural yeast in that area, or do they always add a certain strain of yeast to the wines, depending on what they're making?
spoken like a brewer.
Exactly.
That's right. So no, the majority of the small production wineries actually just utilize the yeast that's already on the grapes. They crush and let it go. So it's a wild fermentation for the most part. When you get to some of the larger production wineries, that's where they tend to inoculate with a specific yeast. And I'm not saying that's good, bad, or sideways, but it is how it is normally done in the wine world. And then this guy, even though it does have, so this wine has high acidity, it's at 14.5% alcohol. A lot of these things would indicate that you could get some age out of this guy, but it really doesn't hold up. The Mission Grape, and I will call you Mission Grape if I want to, because that's what you are. It really isn't made for it. It doesn't hold up over time. So what'll happen if you give this guy a 10 plus years, you're going to end up with kind of a flat, you'll lose the peppery, nice character of this wine. It's meant to be consumed within 5 to 7 years. 7 would be on the outside. So it's a lot like most Chardonnay in that form, which not that it tastes anything like it, but not meant to be aged. That's not this guy. But intriguing because it talks, we talked about aging and how complex it is. And that generally, if something was higher acidity and had at least modest alcohol, you would think, okay, 10 to 15 years, it should go okay. But it really, this is a specific character within this grape that just does not handle time all that well. It's not going to be bad at 6 years, but it's not going to be good at 12. It's not going to be good at 15. You don't want to go there. So definitely, if you were to jump into Canary Island wine in the future and grab some, it's meant for grab, don't hold it all that long and consume. It's not a ticking clock. I mean, you got 5 to 7 years from when it's bottled. I mean, so this guy's good through 2025. So it's not that hard, but compared to some of the things we talked about, like the Tate the Ball Buster, which almost seems like it could age until the end of time because it was so huge. This one's a little bit different.
What was the word you guys used at the beginning? Not really. I don't know. It was a light, not very full.
Yeah,
Used to describe.
medium-bodied wine.
Yeah.
Acidic and light on the flavor of the fruit is very fresh.
Yeah, I think that's what lends itself to not aging.
Yeah, I agree. It's that the freshness tends to be, if the really pleasant character of it tends to be based on freshness, often you're going to want to keep that while it's at optimum, because the whole point of aging is sometimes things are, let's call it, too fresh when you have a ton of acidity and you want that acidity to relax a little bit. But this guy I don't find to be too tart. I think it's at about where it needs to be right now. Yeah. So here we are. So are you guys enjoying this wine? And that's where we're going to go back to. Are you enjoying it? And what do you think would be an appropriate score? So here we are, the Tipple's Wine Club scoring class. Let's start with A. Are you enjoying this wine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, I think it has character, but it's still easy to enjoy. I hope you guys agree.
Mhm.
And
It's light, good.
yeah, I think I like the fact that it owns what it is. It's a clean fermentation. It's got character. I would give it a 90. I think a 90 is not too crazy. What do you guys think?
That's what I was, 90, 91.
89.7.
Between 89 and 90 was.
Welcome to my life. I was gonna go with like this. I think just because I liked the special qualities words of the 85 to 89 to do like the 88, 89, because like I wouldn't say
That's
it's my
what I was thinking too.
it's not my favorite of all the wines we've had. And even at first I was like, how would I describe this? And then we found like the right food pairing for it. And it really, really brings like the flavor where I was like, okay, I'm genuinely enjoying this. And that's where that, like, it's very good, it has special qualities. Like, but I think you're right. Like that mentality of like an 88 to an 89 isn't an A, so that's not good, is like still a very good wine.
Oh, right.
But, I think, I mean, for me, not an 89.75 or whatever you said.
I think anywhere between 88 and 91 are all very reasonable scores, anywhere along those ways.
She mentioned it before with the pepper chips we have. We have pepper chips with a jalapeno dip. You take a bite of that and take a sip of this, it really brings out the pepper. It's like, whoa, like this tastes like a different wine after you take a bite of that. It's
yeah, I think it's a good point, Brian. It's very much a food wine.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to go with like a steak with like blue cheese, crumbles on top and that kind of a thing, it would be an incredible pairing to just bring this out. This is a great, and so many old world wines. So when it's pretty much a synonym. If you say it's a very old world wine, that it's a wine that's best with a food pairing. And that is what they made it for. That was their point, was you should be eating while you drink it.
You pair it.
It's probably good word.
I think it's very flexible.
Mm-hmm.
You can push it whichever direction, and it's amenable to different spices, different meats, different foods.
Sure. But can you push it good?
Push it real good.
Can you push it real good?
I'm still recording.
I was like,
Hey, look, it's in the name of the band, Salt and Pepper.
I was trying to move on. In the beginning, I was like, this has a watery kind of finish. And then Chris was saying something that was about floral, and Robin went, and I was like, oh, good. So it's not just David and Rachel. Maybe like Chris and Robin will be like, no, I don't agree with you, my dear. You darling, sweet thing, you. But now that I've got more food with it and changed it up a little bit, and for once warmer, this one's got a lot of different places it's going the warmer it gets.
Sure.
And I don't think I would have been happy just warm right out of the gate.
Yeah, well, I can see that. Definitely brings it all out.
I'm discovering I like high minerality.
You're right. There's a lot of like because I want to say granite, but granite's not enough. It's like that mineral, like what I picture of that black volcanic rock might taste like. So you've got that high minerality, a lot of pepper quality, going with some really nice cherry, and even on the finish, I've just got this. Whoever would have thought that if someone said to me, "Hey, look, here's a cherry, put a bunch of pepper on top and eat it, and you're gonna like it." I never would have thought that would be the case, but here I am enjoying this wine very much. So
that is a kind of an interesting point that Rachel made. If the wines warm up and they change flavors so much, like does the cold temperature quell some of the flavors from the very beginning? Like why even chill it? Like why not just start warm?
There are some wines that actually kind of need that lower temperature in order to not become overly ripe. So it depends on the blend. On that, if you get to certain Bordeaux varietals, frankly, the Tate, the Ballbuster red blend from Australia could use some restraint. You get that guy at its full force to begin with, and it's just it's a Ballbuster. It's what they said. It's a big wine, and the booziness starts to come out in the warmth. So some wines, yes, some wines, no, because the majority of red wines benefit from a little cooler presentation than 75 degrees, so not cold, but 65. Because of that, we just default to it.
So just buy 2 bottles and do it both ways for every time you buy a bottle of wine.
Yeah, but I say yes to that. I think that's a great way to go.
I figured you would.
Yeah. All right, so let's jump back in here. So we all agreed we're around 88 to 91, which I think is a pretty close cluster, as we've talked before about most spreads are pretty close. And I'm glad you guys liked the wine. I really do too. I thought it was really fun. And now we're going to move on to next week's wine. So we've gone through, I like to do like 1 out of every 6 is what I called before, the welcome home hug to your palate. So we're going back to a red blend from California. It's going to be a welcome home Halloween hug. Oh, shoot. I jumped the gun. All right. Hey, all right. We were drinking way down here. So here's our wine growing latitudes before I move on. So before I go to next week's wine, so we always like to look. So here we are. We're drinking. This is it, actually, right down here at the bottom of the wine growing regions, where it really does need that height. It needs that altitude to dry it off so it's not too wet. These guys are actually desert areas, so when they grow, they can handle it as well. So this is the area where humidity could destroy your crop. But if you have a microclimate or not so microclimate that is drier, then you can still grow down here. So here we are with the wine growing region. And now we will jump to, boom, Aaron, here's what I was talking about. Next week, we're drinking the Chronic Cellars Purple Paradise, skull on the label, Halloween kind of theme, badass red blend. Number 25 in the top 100 best buys of 2020, 92 points. Zinfandel dominant red blend, barbecue, burgers, hearty meat sauces, sharp cheeses, lamb, Middle Eastern spice food, zigzag and sideways, whatever you want to throw at this wine, it can handle it. And it is delicious. That is what we're going to be drinking next week. I hope you guys will join me again, because it's a fun wine. It's a fun winery. Their whole viewpoint is making great wines without taking themselves too seriously. They have their collection of wines. They have their Cabernet Sauvignon. It's a night skeleton. It's named SIR, Sur Real. Their very high-end Cabernet-based red blend is called the Sofa King Good.
Oh, yeah.
I get it. It took me a second.
Yeah. So these guys are awesome. I love the puns. I love the wines, and I love the point of view that they're doing. So I'm bringing all of them in next week, and I hope you guys will join me to drink the Purple Paradise And I think we're going to have a whole lot of fun right before Halloween. So let's have a quick toast, and then we'll stop recording and we can keep talking.
Mm.
You guys have been really good. I don't have to delete anything from this recording. I'm so proud of everybody.
Other than yourself.
I know.
All
Thank
right.
you so much, guys.
Okay.
Fun.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Let's see here.